everyone. Hi girls, hi Michelle. Hello everyone at Troop 10. My name is Elise, Laura Elise, and I'm an entomologist. Now Michelle is a really good friend of mine, and she told me you guys are working on your bug badges. And I think that is really cool because I really like insects. And when she told me this, she wanted to know if I could answer some questions for you guys about entomology, about insects, and what it means to be an entomologist. And I thought that was a great idea. So I'm going to try to answer some of these questions for you, okay? All right, well I have my questions right here, so why don't we get started? All right, the first question I have from Michelle is, what kinds of things does an entomologist do? Well, first we want to make sure we understand what the word entomology means. That's really simple. It just means the study of insects. So anyone who studies insects is an entomologist. Now there are many different kinds of insects. In fact, there are more different kinds of insects in the world than any other creature living on the planet. And that means there are lots of different kinds of entomologists. For example, there are some entomologists that study aquatic entomology. That means they study insects that live underwater. There are also agricultural entomologists, and those people are going to study insects that damage or eat our crops, like corn and wheat, for example. There's also urban entomology, which is the kind that I studied in school. Now, urban entomologists are going to study insects that are pests, particularly in houses, like cockroaches and ants and termites. And we try to find solutions to keep them from invading our homes. There are also field entomologists that go out and look for new insects and name them and study their behavior, study where they live and what they eat. And there's also medical entomologists. And those entomologists are going to study insects that can transmit diseases to people or other animals. Okay? Now there are many other kinds of entomologists. I'm not going to name them all, but I thought I'd highlight just a couple for you today. Okay, next question. How did you know that you wanted to become an entomologist? Whew. Well, when I was a kid, I didn't like insects at all. In fact, they scared me. But it wasn't until I took a class in college when I was a little older that I fell in love with them. I started to understand them, and I learned why they did the things that they did, and it made them a lot less scary. And I loved learning about them so much that I decided, well, I want to become an entomologist. And so I took some more science classes and some math classes, and I got my master's degree in entomology. And that allowed me to get a job working for a company as an entomologist. Okay, so next question is, which insect do you think is the coolest and why? Whew. Well, my favorite insect is the honeybee. See, I even got my honeybee pin on for you guys. There are lots of reasons why I like the honeybee, and not just because it's a pollinator and because they make honey, although that's really cool. I like honeybees because I like the way they're organized inside a hive. I think it's fascinating the way they can build their own hive. There are many different kinds of bees within the hive. There are worker bees and forager bees, and there's the queen bee, and she controls everything. And everyone in the hive is pretty much, they're all female, they're all girls, except for near the end of the season when the queen bee is going to make a few male bees, and we call those drones. I also think it's amazing the way bees can use the sun and patterns in the sky to help find their way back home. There's lots of other things that they do that's really neat. So bees would have to be my favorite. My second favorite is the praying mantis. But I'll talk a little bit later about the praying mantis. Okay, next question is, are there any non-insect or creepy crawlers that you like? Yes. There are two creepy crawlers that come to mind that I really like, and the first is the spider. We call them arachnids because they're not insects, and I know a lot of people are scared of spiders, and some of them are very dangerous, and they should never be touched. So if you're not sure, it's best to just leave the spider alone. But what I think is pretty cool about spiders is that some of them can mimic other animals. And by mimic, mimic is just a fancy word that means looks like. So there are some spiders that look like ants, and some spiders that look like ladybugs. Well, it's just pretty neat. But the other thing that's really interesting about spiders is that they have found a way to make spider webs. Instead of chasing after their food, they spin a web, a sticky web, and catch their food, catch other insects in it. And I think that's pretty neat. Yep. The other creepy crawler that I really like is the millipede. Now, millipedes are not insects because they have way more than 6 legs. That's for sure. But what's interesting about the millipede is you can have millipedes that are very small, and then there are some millipedes like the giant African millipede that can get up to almost 40 centimeters long, and they can have over 250 legs. That is pretty neat. What's also pretty neat is that the millipede, though it's pretty harmless, it doesn't sting or bite, it's not completely defenseless, right? If you shake it, or if you scare a millipede, what it'll do is it'll curl up into a tight spiral, it'll tuck its little legs in, and it'll release an odor, a smell. Some people think it smells kind of like almonds. Well, this smell, this odor, repels other insects. And there are lots of insects that don't like it because it can be irritating to them. What's really cool about that is there are some monkeys that have figured this out. And these monkeys, by just watching and observing, they noticed that if they take a millipede and they kind of shake it gently so that it releases this yucky smell, the monkey will rub that smell all over them and use it as a repellent to keep bugs away from them, like mosquitoes. So these monkeys use millipedes kind of like the way people use bug spray. And that's just really cool. I thought that's great. So, okay, next question. All right, so do you have an insect that you could show us? Oh, I do. I have a praying mantis to show you. The other day, my neighbor found this praying mantis in her garden. Take her out for you real gently. And normally, when I get, here she is. Now, you may not be able to see this really well, but I will send pictures to Michelle. And normally when I find insects like this and show them to my children, we'll talk about them, and then usually we'll release them back into the wild. But what I noticed with this praying mantis is that she has a deformed wing. And you'll see that in the pictures. And something must have happened during her last molt, and her wing got stuck, which means that now she can't fly. And so if I were to leave her in nature, well, she'd probably become food for a bird pretty quickly. Oof, let me put her here. All right. So she stayed in this little cage I have for her, and a couple days afterwards, she made an ootheca. And the ootheca is a fancy word that means cocoon. And inside the cocoon, she laid her eggs inside. And inside one ootheca, they can be up to, well, from anywhere from 100 to 200 eggs inside. Now that is wild. So that means I'm gonna need a bigger cage for her. What's interesting about the praying mantis is that they are predators. Okay, they eat other insects like flies and crickets and moths and mosquitoes. Anything that eats a mosquito is fine by me. The praying mantis is also the only insect that can look over its shoulder. That's pretty neat, huh? Now, the praying mantis also has these really strange front legs that fold up like this. And they use these legs that have these spikes on them to catch their prey. Okay, and they're really good at it. So this would have to be my second favorite insect. Okay. All right. Next question. Why are insects important to the earth? Okay. Well, insects are important because they are a part of the food chain. Many animals that we eat depend on insects. Well, they eat insects, and so if all of the insects were to disappear, well, a lot of our other animals would disappear as well. Insects are also important because they break down and eat things that no other animal would want to eat. Okay, so in a way they help keep the planet clean. They also pollinate flowers, and without our pollinators, like the honeybee, we would have no fruit, right? And so that's just some of the reasons why insects are so important. And we should try to avoid killing them when possible, especially our beneficial insects. And so if you see an insect outside and it's not bothering anyone, well, there's really no use in just squishing it. Better yet, take the time to observe it, watch it, see what it does. Be an entomologist for a couple minutes, and then just leave it alone. Now, however, there are some pests, there are some insects that are considered pests. Now, what is a pest? What makes an insect a pest? Well, a pest is simply a living thing that is in a place we don't want it to be. Okay, for an example, a weed is a plant that grows in a spot that we don't want it to grow, okay? Ants in the kitchen are pests because we don't want them in our house. But an insect can also be a pest if it bites or stings or eats our food or makes holes in our clothes or eats the wood in our homes. So that's why it's important for us to study insects and study what makes them a pest so that we can try to find solutions to keep them from doing all of these terrible things. Okay? And if a mosquito, for example, lands on you, feel free to whack it. Oh, can you tell I'm not a big fan of mosquitoes? So anyway, insects are really great creatures and really great to study. And by studying nature and by studying insects, we can get ideas on trying to make things better in our lives for people. Okay? So there you have it. The last question I have for Michelle is, she asked me if I had any bug jokes. The only bug joke I have is this one. Okay, you ready? What do you call a rabbit with beetles all over it? Give up. Bugs Bunny. Okay, ladies, you guys have fun. It's been great talking to you guys about insects. Enjoy your bug hike. Have fun. I hope you guys collect lots of cool creepy crawlers. And be safe and have fun. All right, guys. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye. Silly thing.